The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Hana stood at the observation window of the orbital station and watched the endless black space beyond Earth. She had spent 30 years in the Navy. She had seen battles, victories, and losses. But she had never seen anything like this. 500 warships filled the space around her home planet. They hung in the darkness like metal teeth, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The Velen Armada had arrived 3 days ago without warning. They came through a spacefold that tore open like a wound in the sky, and now they waited. Hana turned away from the window and walked back to the command center. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Around her, officers worked at their stations. Their faces were pale. Their hands shook as they pressed buttons and read reports. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew what was coming. "Admiral," said a young officer named June. He stood near the main screen with a tablet in his hands. "We have received another message from the Velan flagship." Hana nodded slowly. "Put it on the main screen." The large display flickered and changed. A face appeared. It was not human. The Velen had gray skin that looked like stone. Their eyes were yellow with no visible pupils. This one wore a collar of bright metal around its thick neck. Commander Dren. He had sent messages before. Each one was worse than the last. "Humans of Earth," Dren said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "You have had time to think about our offer. Surrender your planet. Give us your resources and your labor. In return, we will let most of you live as workers in our empire. This is fair. This is generous." Hana felt her jaw tighten. Generous. They called slavery generous. Dren continued. "If you refuse again, we will begin our attack. Your fleet is destroyed. Your weapons are useless against us. You have nothing left to fight with. You have 12 hours to accept. After that, we will burn your cities one by one until you beg us to stop." The screen went dark. The command center was silent. Hana could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She looked around at the faces of her officers. Some were young, barely out of training. Others were old veterans like her. All of them looked to her for answers, but she had no answers. June stepped closer. "Admiral, what do we do?" Hana closed her eyes for a moment. 3 days ago, the Earth Defense Fleet had moved to intercept the Velan Armada. 120 ships. The best humanity had. The battle lasted less than an hour. The Velan weapons cut through human shields like they were made of paper. Not a single human ship survived. 10,000 sailors died in the cold of space. Now there was nothing left. A few patrol boats. Some transport ships. Nothing that could fight. "We need more time," Hana said quietly. "Time for what?" asked another officer. Her name was Yuna, and she ran the communication systems. "No one is coming to help us. The colonies on Mars and the outer moons have their own problems. They cannot send ships fast enough." Also, Hana knew this was true. She had already sent messages to every human settlement in the solar system. The answers were all the same. "We are sorry. We cannot help. We are preparing our own defenses." Humanity was alone. "There must be something," June said. His voice was desperate. "Some weapon we have not used. Some ship hidden somewhere." Hana shook her head. "Everything we had was in that fleet. The government spent 40 years building those ships. They are all gone now." "What about older ships?" Yuna asked. "The museums, the shipyards that store retired vessels. Maybe there is something there." It was a foolish hope. Old ships were old for a reason. Their technology was outdated. Their weapons were weak. But Hana found herself thinking about it anyway, because foolish hope was better than no hope at all. "Send a message to every shipyard and storage facility in the system," Hana ordered. "Ask them what ships they have. Anything that can fly. Anything that can fight." The officers nodded and began working. Hana knew it was probably useless. What could an old ship do against 500 Velen warships? But she had to try. She had to do something. Hours passed. Reports came back slowly. Most were disappointing. A few cargo ships here, a broken patrol vessel there. Nothing useful. Then a message arrived from Titan, the moon of Saturn. It came from an old woman named Soon, who ran a forgotten shipyard in the frozen wastes. Admiral, the message said, I have something you might want. It is old, very old, but it still works. The Taeguk. Do you know that name? Hana's breath caught in her throat. She did know that name. Every human who studied history knew that name. The Taeguk was a frigate built 200 years ago, during the First Contact War. Back then, humanity had just discovered that they were not alone in the universe, and the first aliens they met had tried to kill them. The Taeguk was one of the ships that fought back. According to the stories, it once faced an entire enemy fleet alone and somehow survived. It became a legend, a symbol of human defiance, but the ship was ancient. Its technology was primitive compared to modern vessels. What could it possibly do now? Hana thought about the Velen commander's words. You have nothing left to fight with. Maybe that was true. Maybe humanity had no weapons left that could win a battle. But maybe winning was not the only option. Maybe there was another way. She remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was young. He was a soldier too, a man who had seen many wars. Sometimes, he said, the strongest weapon is not a gun or a bomb. Sometimes the strongest weapon is a story. The Velen had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. They had destroyed the human fleet and now waited for surrender. They believed humans were weak. They believed humans would give up. What if they were wrong? Hana turned to her officers. Contact the shipyard on Titan. Tell them to wake up the Taeguk. Find me a crew willing to fly her. June stared at her. Admiral, that ship is 200 years old. It cannot fight 500 warships. Maybe not, Hana said. But it can remind them who we are. She looked out at the stars again, at the metal shapes waiting to destroy her world. 12 hours. That was all the time they had. But 12 hours was enough to tell a story. And sometimes, a story was all you needed. Tay was 73 years old when the call came. He sat in his small house on the edge of a farming settlement on Titan. Through his window, he could see the orange clouds of Saturn hanging in the black sky. It was a peaceful view. He had spent the last 15 years looking at it, trying to forget the things he had done in his younger days. His communication device made a sound. He looked at it for a long moment before answering. He knew what it meant when the military called retired officers. It never meant good news. The face of Admiral Hana appeared on the small screen. She looked tired. Dark circles hung under her eyes. But her voice was steady when she spoke. Captain Tay? I am Admiral Hana of Earth Defense Command. I am not a captain anymore, Tay said. I retired 15 years ago. I know, Hana paused. But I need you to be a captain again. I need you to fly a ship. Tay was quiet for a moment. He had heard about the Velen Armada. Everyone had heard. The news spread across the solar system like fire. 500 warships, the Earth fleet destroyed, humanity facing extinction. What ship? He asked, though he already knew the answer. There was only one ship on Titan that mattered. The Taeguk. Tay closed his eyes. Memories flooded back. He was 40 years old when he last served on that ship. He was the weapons officer. He remembered the smell of the old metal corridors, the sound of the engines humming, the feeling of fear and pride mixed together in his chest. That ship is older than I am, Tay said. I do not know if it can even fly. The shipyard keeper says it can. She has been maintaining it all these years. But she needs a crew. She needs a captain. Tay opened his eyes and looked at the picture on his wall. It showed a young man in a naval uniform, standing in front of a ship. That young man was him, 50 years ago. He barely recognized himself. Why me? He asked. Because you served on her, because you know her, and because, Hana's voice softened, because we have no one else. Tay understood. The real captains were dead. The real crews were gone. All that remained were old men and women who remembered a different time. A time when humanity was young and brave and foolish enough to fight against impossible odds. "I will come," Tay said. He ended the call and stood up slowly. His bones ached. His hands were not as steady as they used to be. But somewhere deep inside him, something woke up. Something that had been sleeping for 15 years. The shipyard was an hour's journey from his house. He took a small transport vehicle across the frozen ground. The orange light of Saturn cast long shadows on the ice. Tay did not look at the scenery. He looked ahead, toward the metal buildings in the distance. The shipyard was old and mostly forgotten. The government stopped using it decades ago. But soon, the keeper had refused to let it die. She stayed behind when everyone else left. She maintained the ships that no one wanted. She kept them alive because she believed they still mattered. Tay found her waiting at the main entrance. She was 82 years old, small and thin, with white hair that floated around her face like a cloud. But her eyes were sharp and clear. "You came," she said. "You called." Soon smiled. It was a sad smile, full of memories. "Come, let me show you." She led him through the shipyard. They passed rows of old vessels, most of them dark and silent. But at the end of the building, in a special section, one ship had lights. One ship was awake, the Taeguk. Tay stopped and stared. The ship was smaller than he remembered. Modern frigates were 3 times its size. The hull was covered in old marks and patches where damage had been repaired over the years. The paint was faded. The metal was dull, but the ship was beautiful. "I have kept her ready," Soon said quietly. "I always believed someone would need her again." Tay walked forward and placed his hand on the hull. The metal was cold under his fingers. He could feel the ship. Somehow. Feel its history. Its pain. Its pride. "Can she fly?" he asked. "She can fly. She can fight. Her weapons are old, but they work. Her shields are weak by modern standards, but they will hold. She is slow, and stubborn, and outdated." Soon paused. "Just like us." Tay almost laughed. "Almost. I need a crew," he said. "I have already sent messages," Soon replied. "Veterans who served on ships like this one. Young volunteers who want to do something, anything, to help. They are coming." Over the next 6 hours, people arrived. They came in small shuttles and transport pods. They came from all over Titan. From the settlements and stations scattered across the frozen moon. Tay watched them gather in the shipyard. Some were old like him. Gray hair, lined faces, hands that shook. They were engineers and gunners, and pilots who had retired years ago. They should have been resting. They should have been safe. But they came anyway. Others were young. Men and women barely out of school. They had no experience. They had no training on old ships like this. But they had something else. They had courage. They had the will to fight. A young woman named Bora approached Tay. She had short black hair and serious eyes. "I want to help," she said. "I can learn. This ship is not like the ones they teach about in school." Tay warned her. "Everything is manual. Everything is difficult. I do not care. I want to do something. I cannot just wait for the Valan to kill my family." Tay nodded slowly. He understood. He felt the same way. By the end of the day, they had 47 crew members. It was not enough. The Taeguk was designed for 80. But it would have to be enough. Soon helped them load supplies. Food, water, ammunition for the old guns. Replacement parts that she had been saving for 50 years. She worked alongside the young volunteers, showing them where everything went, how everything worked. As the crew prepared the ship, Tay went to the bridge. It was small and cramped, filled with screens and buttons that looked ancient compared to modern technology. But when he sat in the captain's chair, something clicked into place. Something felt right. An old man named Ho came to stand beside him. Ho had been an engineer on the Taeguk 60 years ago. His hands were spotted with age, but they still knew how to work machines. The engines are ready, Ho said. She wants to fly, Captain. I can feel it. Tay looked at the main screen. It showed the stars outside, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, 500 warships waited to destroy his home. Then let us give her what she wants, Tay said. He pressed the button to start the engines. The ship shuddered. The lights flickered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the old engines roared to life. The sound filled the ship like a heartbeat. Like a promise. The Taeguk was awake. Tay opened a communication channel to the crew. This is Captain Tay. We are about to fly into a fight we cannot win. The enemy has 500 ships. We have one, but we have something they do not have. We have 200 years of defiance, 200 years of refusing to die. Today, we remind the galaxy what that means. He turned to the pilot, a young man named Gyu who had never flown anything bigger than a cargo shuttle. Take us out. The Taeguk lifted from the shipyard. Its old engines burned bright against the frozen ground. The ship rose into the orange sky of Titan, then higher, into the black void of space. Behind them, Soon watched from the ground. She raised her hand in farewell. The ghost had awakened, and it was flying toward the enemy. The journey from Titan to Earth took 9 hours. 9 hours of silence, of waiting, of preparing for something that felt impossible. The crew of the Taeguk worked through the darkness of space, checking systems, loading weapons, and trying not to think about what waited for them at the end. Tay stood on the bridge, watching the stars move slowly past the windows. His body was tired. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But his mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in years. Bora came to stand beside him. The young woman had proven herself useful during the journey. She learned fast. She asked good questions. She did not complain when the work was hard. "Captain," she said quietly, "what happens when we get there?" Tay did not answer right away. He had been asking himself the same question since they left Titan. What could one old ship do against 500 warships? The answer was simple. Nothing. They could do nothing that would change the military situation, but maybe that was not the point. "We will make them see us," Tay said finally. "We will remind them that humanity does not kneel." And then, Tay looked at her. Her eyes were scared but determined. She was so young. She should have been in school, or starting a career, or falling in love. Instead, she was here, on a dying ship, flying towards certain death. "Then we will see what happens," Tay said. It was not a good answer, but it was the only honest one. The ship's sensors made a sound. Ho's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, we are approaching the asteroid belt. Earth is on the other side. The Velen Armada is everywhere." Tay walked to the main screen and looked at the sensor display. 500 red dots surrounded a blue dot that was Earth. The Velen ships were spread out in a perfect formation, covering every approach to the planet. There was no way to sneak past them. There was no way to hide. "Take us through the belt," Tay ordered. "Slowly. I want to come out right in front of them." Gyu nodded and adjusted the ship's course. The Taeguk moved through the field of floating rocks, its old hull creaking as small stones bounced off the shields. The crew held their breath. On the Velan flagship, Commander Dren sat in his command chair and watched the countdown. 2 hours remained until the deadline. The humans had not surrendered. He was not surprised. Humans were stubborn. It was one of the reasons his people wanted them gone. An officer approached his chair. "Commander, we are detecting a ship emerging from the asteroid belt." Dren waved his hand dismissively. "One of their patrol vessels. Ignore it." "Sir, it is not a patrol vessel." "It is. Different." Dren frowned and looked at the sensor display. A single ship appeared on the screen, moving slowly toward the Armada. It was small, tiny, compared to his warships. Its design was old, primitive, nothing like the modern human vessels they had destroyed 3 days ago. "What is that thing?" Dren asked. The officer studied his data. "It appears to be a human frigate, but the design is extremely outdated. At least 200 years old. Dren laughed. The sound was harsh and loud, like stones falling. They send an antique against us? Have the humans lost their minds? Other Valan officers joined in the laughter. The bridge filled with the sound of their mockery. 500 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. And the humans sent one old ship to face them. It was pathetic. It was insulting. But not everyone laughed. In the back of the bridge, an old Valan named Vorn stood in silence. He was an advisor. A veteran of many campaigns, kept around because he remembered things that younger officers had forgotten. His yellow eyes were fixed on the image of the approaching ship. He knew that ship. Vorn walked forward slowly. The laughter died as officers noticed his expression. His face was pale. His hands trembled slightly. "Commander," Vorn said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "That ship. Do you know what it is?" Dren looked at the old advisor with amusement. "It is a relic. A museum piece. Nothing more." Vorn shook his head. "No. Look at the markings on the hull. The symbol on the front." Dren looked more closely at the screen. The ship had a circular symbol painted on its hull. It was faded and old, but still visible. A red and blue design, divided by a curved line. "That is the Teguk," Vorn said. "The ship of nightmares." The bridge went silent. Some of the younger officers looked confused. But the older ones, those who knew history, those who remembered the stories their parents told them, they understood. "That ship was destroyed 200 years ago," Dren said. But his voice was less certain now. "No," Vorn replied. "That ship was never destroyed. It destroyed. Do you not know the history? Do you not remember what happened to the Koran Empire?" Dren did not answer. He had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had heard them. But they were just stories. Legends. Myths told to frighten children, Vorn continued. 200 years ago, the Koran sent a fleet to conquer the human homeworld. 50 ships. The humans had almost nothing. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons were weak. But one ship, that ship, stood against the entire fleet. "One ship cannot defeat 50, a young officer said. Vorn turned to look at him. "You are correct. One ship cannot defeat 50, but the Teguk did not need to defeat them. It just needed to survive. It just needed to fight. And it did. For 3 days, that ship fought alone. It took damage that should have destroyed it 10 times over. But it kept fighting. It kept coming back." The bridge was completely silent now. "By the end," Vorn said, "the Koran fleet was terrified. Not because they could not destroy the ship, but because they could not understand it. How could something so weak, so small, so primitive, refuse to die? They began to believe the ship was cursed. They began to believe the humans had made a deal with something dark and powerful. Superstition, Dren said, but his voice was weak. The Koran retreated. All 50 ships. They fled from one small frigate. And when they returned to their empire, they told everyone what they had seen. Within a generation, the Koran Empire collapsed. Not from military defeat, from fear, from the knowledge that somewhere in the universe there was a species that simply would not stop, would not give up, would not die. Dren looked at the screen again. The Teguk was still approaching, slow and steady. Its old engines left a trail of light behind it. "It is just one ship," Dren said. "We have 500. Vorn nodded. "Yes. But they only have one ship too. And they are still coming. Ask yourself, Commander. Why? Why would they send one ancient ship against 500? Unless..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Unless they knew something the Velen did not. On the Teguk, Tay watched the enemy ships fill his screen. 500 massive vessels, weapons powered, shields raised. Any one of them could destroy his ship in seconds. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. I want every ship in that fleet to hear this." Ho's fingers moved across the old communication console. "Channel open, Captain." Tay stood up from his chair. His old body ached. His heart beat fast. But his voice was calm and clear when he spoke. "This is Captain Tay of the Earth Frigate Taeguk. We are here to deliver a message. You have come to our home with threats and demands. You have told us to surrender or die. You believe we have nothing left to fight with. You are wrong." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. Old and young, scared and brave. All of them listening. "We have been fighting since before your empire was born. We fought when we had nothing. We fought when everyone told us it was impossible. We are still fighting now. This ship is 200 years old. Its crew is made of veterans and volunteers. We are not enough to defeat you, but we are enough to show you who we are." The bridge of the Taeguk was silent. On the Velen flagship, Dren gripped the arms of his chair until his gray fingers turned white. Tay's voice continued across the void of space. "You can destroy this ship. You can destroy our planet. But you will never destroy what we are. We are humanity, and we do not surrender." The message ended. The Taeguk kept moving forward, toward the wall of enemy ships, one small light against an ocean of darkness. And on the bridges of 500 warships, fear began to spread. The silence on the Velen flagship lasted for a long time. Officers stared at their screens. Soldiers stood frozen at their posts. Everyone waited for Commander Dren to speak, to give orders, to tell them what to do. But Dren said nothing. He sat in his chair and looked at the small ship on the display. His mind was racing. He was a military commander, trained to fight, trained to win. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had destroyed enemies far more powerful than these humans. But something about this moment felt different. Vorn spoke again, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "There is more to the story, Commander. More that you should know." "Tell me," Dren said. His voice was flat. Vorn walked slowly to the main screen. The image of the Taeguk filled the display. It looked so small, so weak, so old. But Vorn knew that appearances could lie. After the Koran fleet retreated, word spread across the galaxy. The story of the ship that would not die. Other species heard it. Other empires. Some laughed, like you did. They thought it was a lie, a myth, an exaggeration. They sent their own fleets to test the humans, to prove that the story was false. Vorn paused. The bridge was completely still. None of them succeeded. The Drin Collective sent 30 ships. They lost 22 before they gave up. The Makoth Federation sent 100 vessels. The humans fought them for 2 weeks. The Makoth withdrew with barely half their fleet intact, and every time, the stories grew. The legends became stronger. Oldvater, Dren shook his head. That was 200 years ago. Human technology has changed. Our technology has improved. The past does not matter, does it not? Vorn turned to face the commander. Look at your officers, Dren. Look at their faces. They have heard the stories too. They know what that ship means. You can order them to fight. You can threaten them with punishment, but you cannot make them believe they will win. Dren looked around the bridge. Vorn was right. The younger officers tried to hide their fear, but it was there in their eyes. The older ones did not even try to hide it. They remembered the stories from their childhood. The ship that came back from death, the humans who fought like demons, the legend that had haunted their people for generations. This is foolish, Dren said. It is one ship, one ancient, broken ship, against 500 modern warships. The mathematics is simple. Then destroy it, Vorn said quietly. Give the order. Fire all weapons. Turn that ship into dust. Prove that the legend is false. Dren opened his mouth to give the order. But the words did not come. On the Taeguk, the crew watched the enemy fleet. The massive warships had not moved. Their weapons were powered but not firing. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Bora stood next to Tay on the bridge. Her hands were shaking, but she did not hide them. Why are they not attacking? Tay watched the screen carefully. He had expected to die by now. He had expected the Vallon to destroy his ship the moment they saw it. But they were hesitating. They were waiting. They are afraid, Tay said. Afraid? Of us? Bora looked at him like he was crazy. We are nothing to them. That is exactly why they are afraid. Tay turned to face her. If we were a powerful fleet, they would know how to fight us. They would calculate their advantages, make their plans, use their superior numbers. But we are one old ship with 47 people on board. We should not be here. We should not have come. And yet, here we are. Ho spoke up from his station. Captain, I am detecting communications between the Velen ships. A lot of them. They are talking to each other. Can you hear what they are saying? Ho shook his head. Encrypted. But the volume is increasing. They are arguing about something. Tay smiled. It was a small smile. Tired and sad. But real. Good. Let them argue. Tay smiled. Good. Good. Let them argue. On the Velen flagship, the argument had spread beyond the bridge. Captains of other ships were sending messages, asking questions, demanding answers. Some wanted to attack immediately, others wanted to wait. A few were suggesting retreat. Dren read the messages with growing anger. His perfect fleet, his invincible armada, was falling apart over one tiny ship. This is madness, he growled. We will not be frightened by human tricks. He turned to his weapons officer. Target that ship. All forward batteries. Fire on my command. The weapons officer hesitated. His hands hovered over the controls. Commander, are you certain? Do it. The officer pressed the buttons. The great guns of the flagship swung toward the Taeguk. Power built in the weapon systems. On screens throughout the fleet, everyone watched. Vorn stepped forward. Commander, I must tell you one more thing. What? Dren snapped. The Taeguk carries an old weapon, a device from the First Contact War. It was called the Echo. When the ship is destroyed, the Echo activates. It sends a signal across the galaxy, a signal that carries the final moments of the ship and its crew, their last words, their last battle, their refusal to surrender. Dren froze. Vorn continued. The Koran destroyed Taeguk once. Or they thought they did. But the Echo sent out its signal. Billions of beings across the galaxy heard the crew's final transmission. They heard humans fighting to the last breath. They heard them refusing to give up, even as their ship burned around them. And then, somehow, the ship survived. No one knows how. No one can explain it. But the Taeguk came back. That is impossible. Many things are impossible, yet they happen anyway. Vorn's voice was very quiet now. If you destroy that ship, Commander, the Echo will activate again. Every species in the galaxy will hear what happens here. They will hear humans fighting against 500 warships. They will hear them refusing to surrender. And they will remember. Dren looked at the screen. The Taeguk had stopped moving. It sat there in space, small and alone, waiting. Its old hull reflected the light of distant stars. Its engines glowed softly. What do you want me to do? Dren asked. His voice was tired. I want you to think, Vorn replied. You came here to conquer Earth, to take their resources, their labor, their planet. You told them to surrender or die. But what if they choose to die? What if they choose to fight? You can kill them all, Dren. You have the power. But what happens after? Dren did not answer. The galaxy is watching, Vorn said. They are always watching. When word spreads that Earth was destroyed, some species will be relieved. Humans have always made others nervous. But many will ask questions. How many Velen ships did it take? How long did the humans fight? Did they beg? Did they kneel? Vorn pointed at the Taeguk. That ship is your answer. One ancient frigate against 500 warships. And you could not make it run. You could not make it hide. It came right at you, knowing it would die, and it said, "We do not surrender." What will the galaxy think of the Velan after this? Will they fear you? Or will they fear the humans even more? Dren stared at the screen for a long time. The bridge was silent. The entire fleet was silent. On the Teguk, Tay watched the enemy flagship. Its weapons were pointed at his ship. He could see the glow of power in the gun batteries. Any moment now, they would fire. Any moment now, his ship and everyone on it would be destroyed. But the moment did not come. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The Valen guns remained silent. Bora stood beside Tay, tears running down her face. She was not crying from fear. She was crying because she understood what was happening. They had come here to die. They had accepted their fate. But they were still alive, still standing. "They cannot do it," she whispered. "They cannot fire." Tay nodded slowly. His old body trembled with exhaustion and emotion. "They are beginning to understand." "Understand what?" Tay looked at the young woman beside him. She was so young. She had her whole life ahead of her. And she had chosen to spend it here. On this old ship. Facing impossible odds. "That some things are stronger than weapons," Tay said. "Some things cannot be destroyed by fire. The Velen can kill us. But they cannot kill what we represent. They cannot kill the idea of us. And that idea will spread. It will grow. Long after this ship is dust, the story of what we did here will echo across the stars." He turned back to the screen. The Velan fleet still waited. Their weapons still glowed. But they did not fire. "Now we wait," Tay said. "And we see what kind of beings they truly are." 3 hours passed. The deadline came and went. The Velan ultimatum expired. But no attack began. The 500 warships hung in space like frozen statues, their weapons still aimed at Earth, but silent. And in front of them all, the Teguk waited. On the flagship, Commander Dren had not spoken for a long time. He sat in his chair and stared at the small ship on his screen. His officers moved quietly around him, afraid to disturb his thoughts. No one knew what to do. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Messages continued to arrive from other ships in the fleet. Some captains demanded action. Others expressed doubt. A few had begun quietly calculating how much fuel they would need to return home. The perfect unity of the Velen armada was breaking apart, cracking like ice under pressure. Vorn stood in the shadows of the bridge, watching everything. He had said what needed to be said. Now the decision belonged to Dren alone. Finally, the commander stood up. His movements were slow and heavy, like a man carrying a great weight. He walked to the main screen and placed his gray hand on the display. The image of the Teguk glowed under his fingers. "How?" he asked quietly. "How do they do this?" Vorn moved closer. "Do what, Commander?" "This." Dren gestured at the screen. "They have nothing. No fleet. No weapons. No hope. By every measure, they have lost. But they stand there, as if they have already won. How do they find the strength?" Vorn thought about the question for a moment before answering. "I do not know. I have studied humans for 60 years, and I still do not understand them. They are weak, compared to us. They live short lives. They fight among themselves constantly. They make mistakes, suffer, fail. And yet they keep coming," Dren finished. "Yes, they keep coming. No matter how many times they fall, they stand up again. No matter how hopeless the situation, they refuse to accept it. It is not logical. It is not strategic. It is simply what they are." Dren closed his eyes. "If we destroy them today, will they truly disappear?" "No," Vorn's voice was certain. "The humans have spread too far. Their colonies, their outposts, their ships scattered across the galaxy. Even if we burn Earth to ash, humans will survive somewhere. And they will remember. They will tell stories of what happened here. Stories of how 500 Velen warships came to destroy their homeworld. and how one old ship stood against them. They will hate us. Hate is not the worst thing. Vorn paused. They might do something worse. They might learn from us. They might become harder, stronger, more determined. The humans we face today are soft compared to their ancestors. Comfortable, peaceful, but if we push them too far, if we remind them of what they used to be, Dren opened his eyes and looked at Vorn. You think we would create something worse than what exists now? I think we might wake something that has been sleeping. The humans call it many things. Survival instinct, fighting spirit, defiance. Whatever it is, it lives inside them. It sleeps when times are easy. But when they are pushed to the edge, when they have nothing left to lose. Vorn shook his head. The Koran learned this lesson. So did the Drin and the Makoth. Now you must decide if the Velen will learn it too. Dren turned away from the screen. He walked back to his chair but did not sit down. Instead, he stood there, looking at the faces of his officers. Young soldiers who had followed him across the stars, loyal warriors who trusted him with their lives. What would he tell them? That they came all this way for nothing? That 500 warships could not defeat one old frigate? No. He would tell them something else. Open a channel, Dren ordered. All frequencies. I want the humans to hear this. The communication officer pressed the controls. Channel open, Commander. Dren straightened his back and lifted his chin. When he spoke, his voice was strong and clear. This is Commander Dren of the Velen Armada. We came to your world with demands. We expected you to kneel. Instead, you sent one ship. One ancient ship with a crew of old soldiers and young fools. You showed us that humanity does not kneel. He paused. On the Teguk, Tay and his crew listened in silence. We could destroy you. We could burn your planet and kill every human on Earth. But you have shown us something today. You have shown us that death does not frighten you. That you would rather fight and die than live on your knees. Dren looked at Vorn. The old advisor nodded slowly. We do not make war on the fearless. Dren continued. There is no honor in it. There is no victory. The Velen Armada will withdraw. We will leave your system. Your planet will remain free. On the Teguk, Bora grabbed Tay's arm. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. Did he just say? Tay raised his hand for silence. Dren was still speaking. But remember this, humans. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. You have made enemies today by refusing to submit. Some will see your defiance as strength. Others will see it as a challenge. You stand alone now, as you have always stood. Guard your home well. Fight for your children. And never forget what it cost to keep your freedom. The transmission ended. On the screens of the Teguk, the crew watched as the Velen warships began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. The massive fleet turned away from Earth, away from the sun, toward the cold darkness between stars. They were leaving. No one on the Teguk spoke. They stood at their stations and watched the impossible happen. 500 warships, retreating from one old frigate, 500 weapons of war, turned back by courage and stubbornness, and the memory of ancient defiance. Tay felt his legs give way. He sat down heavily in his chair, his old body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Tears fell from his eyes. Though he did not notice them, Ho came to stand beside him. The old engineer's face was wet with tears, too. We did it, Captain. We actually did it. Tay shook his head. No, we did not do anything. We just reminded them who we are, who we have always been. Hours later, when the last Velen ship disappeared into the darkness, Admiral Hana sent a message to the Teguk. Captain Tay, this is Admiral Hana. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I thank you. You and your crew are heroes. Please return home. You have earned your rest. Tay read the message and smiled. Heroes. The word felt strange. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like an old man who had done what needed to be done. He looked around at his crew. Bora was helping Ho check the engines. Gyu was still at the pilot's station, hands steady on the controls. The veterans talked quietly among themselves, sharing memories of battles long past. The young volunteers laughed and cried and hugged each other. They had come here expecting to die. They had found something else instead. They had found the truth about themselves. The truth about what it meant to be human. Tay opened a channel to the crew. All hands, this is the captain. Set course for Earth. We are going home. The Taeguk turned slowly in space. Its old engines fired, pushing the ship toward the blue planet in the distance. Behind them, the stars stretched into infinity. The ship would reach Earth in 9 hours. There would be celebrations, medals, speeches. The crew of the Taeguk would become legends. Their story would spread across the solar system and beyond. But for now, they were just 47 tired people on an old ship, flying through the darkness. They had stood against impossible odds and survived. They had shown the universe what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Tay looked out at the stars and thought about what Dren had said. Never forget what it cost to keep your freedom. He would not forget. None of them would forget. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, 500 warships fled from the memory of human defiance. And on one small frigate, a crew of ordinary people sailed home, carrying a lesson that would echo through history. That courage was not about winning. It was about standing, about refusing to break, about looking into the face of death and saying, simply and clearly, not today. The Taeguk flew on, and humanity, once again, endured.